Warriors, this is the Spartan Underground. And now, your host, James 300 Foster.
I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our amazing sponsors. First off, we have Show Your Roll and Albino and Preto. They've supported the podcast since the beginning. They provide the jiu-jitsu world with the absolute best jiu-jitsu uniforms and apparel on the market. We are also proudly sponsored by Impact Custom Mouthguards. Impact Mouthguards provides the mouthguards for USA Boxing, and they make amazing, lightweight, super protective mouthguards for grappling as well. So definitely make sure you check them out by visiting impactmouthguards.com, and make sure to use the code SPARTAN10 at checkout to receive 10% off of your order. Welcome back, Spartan Warriors. Here we are for episode 15 of the Spartan Underground podcast. This episode features my student, Katie Wonder Woman Egan. Katie has a huge following on the jiu-jitsu scene. She's a very active competitor. She inspires a lot of people all around the world. So we had a great conversation. We discussed a lot of different topics, including how to train with your significant other, advice for training with people of the opposite sex or smaller individuals, how she got the Wonder Woman nickname, and all sorts of other great training tips and advice that she was able to impart, and stories she was able to share about her journey. So I had a great time doing the podcast, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So, as I always say, without further ado, here is episode 15 featuring Katie Wonder Woman Egan. All right, guys, I'm here with Katie Wonder Woman Egan. How you doing today, Katie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, how did the whole Wonder Woman thing come up?
So growing up, I hated Wonder Woman.
Oh, really?
I didn't like female superheroes because they were so sexualized.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually loved Green Lantern growing up because green was my favorite color.
Nice.
And then I got into jiu-jitsu, and I kind of realized that I could be both feminine and badass.
Right.
And so then I started kind of connecting with Wonder Woman, and because of jiu-jitsu, I started liking Wonder Woman.
That's interesting. So would you say you're more of a DC fan or a Marvel fan?
I definitely like DC better.
Okay.
Because I like their TV shows, but I like the Marvel movies. The DC movies haven't been that great.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how they kind of missed with that. Like, I agree, the TV shows have always been a lot better. And now, like, the movies have struggled. I think it's because they didn't have a plan laid out like Marvel did ahead of time, but you definitely see that they have struggled in that department. But I heard they're trying to turn it around.
I hope so.
Yeah, I heard
Shazam was really good.
I heard they're going to do, like, a reboot thing. Once they do the Black Adam movie with The Rock, they're going to try to use that to kind of reboot the franchise. But I'm a nerd. I could talk about comic book stuff all day, but I think being that we both do jiu-jitsu, you train with me, we should kind of talk about how you got into jiu-jitsu. What drew you towards jiu-jitsu, and what has kept you interested in training for all the, relatively few years that you have. I was going to say all the years, but it's all a matter of perspective. How long have you been training now?
It'll be 5 years in December.
Okay. 5 years is decent.
At 28, it feels like a very long time. I don't remember a time before jiu-jitsu, not really.
Definitely.
I found jiu-jitsu on accident. It was the beginning of the year, and me and my best friend got a Groupon for a month-long kickboxing class.
Okay.
I just seen my first UFC, and I wanted to learn, like, self-defense or something. I was coming out of a bad relationship. And I walked in, and the kickboxing class, like, it was all bag work. It was all cardio-based, and I hated every second of it.
So there was no real, like, interaction or anything. It was just mainly kind of like almost like a run-of-the-mill cardio kickboxing type of class.
And there was a jiu-jitsu class that started after, and we stuck around and saw that, and we decided we want to try that. The next day we went in. They didn't have gis for us to wear. We had to wear sweatpants.
Okay.
So I tried my first class with this huge gi top and then sweatpants.
Nice.
But I fell in love with it and started training nonstop and haven't looked back.
What do you think it was that attracted you to more the grappling aspect of things versus the striking element?
It was more challenging.
Okay.
The striking, it was a lot of like shadow boxing, and it didn't feel useful at the time. And this, it was completely new. I had no idea. And at first I was like, wait, you want me to move my body? How?
Right.
You know, hip escapes, shrimps was super hard at first, and so it felt more challenging.
Had you ever done anything grappling related prior to that? Anything with sports or anything? Or was it mainly your first experience with grappling?
It was I wrestled my brother growing up, as like all siblings do, but I don't know if that really counts. I did gymnastics growing up and taekwondo for a little bit, but nothing grappling-wise.
Gymnastics, you probably kind of developed a little bit of a sensibility for the body control and kind of the full body coordination sort of element of jiu-jitsu. Did you feel like jiu-jitsu came to you pretty easily, or was it still the challenge of it that mainly drew you to it?
I always felt like it came really hard, and I felt like I had to drill 10 times harder than everyone.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if it really did or if it was because I was only training with men at first.
Okay. What do you think were some of the challenges in only having male training partners at the time?
I was getting hurt a lot.
Getting smashed.
I was 120 pounds, and the closest person, and he was small, was 160.
Okay.
And so I felt like I was getting smashed all the time. And looking back, I'm not sure how I stuck with it. It was really hard.
Was there a disparity in skill levels, or was it you rolling with other kind of newer people to jiu-jitsu? Because I find sometimes that can be the issue, is that when you have two people who are beginners working with one another, especially when there's a big size difference, that kind of lends itself to some of these preventable injuries and things from happening, just because the person doesn't have the base understanding and the ability to be able to protect their training partner.
I think it was just me going too hard.
Okay.
I think I was like...
Well, I could never believe that. I could never. Everybody knows Katie's as big as me. If you watch the video version of this, you'll be able to see that's not true, but not physically as big as me, but as big as at heart, she's as big as me. We always joke and say she's like the meme of the kitten looking into the mirror and seeing a lion staring back. So
I'm a lion in training.
So you were actually kind of going a little hard, and then it wasn't. It was being reciprocated in a manner which was getting you kind of into some preventable injuries, probably.
I think so.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Kind of sometimes you have to find that line and see, be able to gauge. But when was it that you kind of had that realization that maybe, you were getting hurt a little bit? What was it that kept you going through that, even though you were sustaining some injuries and things? Was it just the overall love of the challenge of it that kept you pushing through and continuing to train?
I think that's what it was. And it was also, I'd moved down to Texas, and I hadn't made that many friends. It was really, all of a sudden, in school, it's easy to make friends. You're in classrooms with people, and then you get to a real job, and it's hard to make friends. And then I joined this gym and made friends, and I think that's kind of what brought me. I felt like this community that I felt like I belonged to already, and that helped me keep going, and then just the love of the sport itself and competing.
So a lot to do with the camaraderie that you were finding through training in jiu-jitsu, and the friendships and things that develop through being in such a close contact sport. I mean, you really need to be able to trust the people that you're training with, and you kind of build a relationship on a whole nother level in that regard. So you're a very active competitor. When did you first start competing? Was that as a white belt?
I started competing 3 months into training.
Oh, wow.
I hadn't planned on it, but there was an all-women's tournament.
Oh, very cool.
I had never even rolled with a girl before my first tournament.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so I just kind of went in, and actually everyone told me I was going to do terrible. They were kind of trying to set my expectations because I'd only been training for 3 months.
Yeah, they were trying to not make you have too big of expectations so you wouldn't be disappointed when you went out type of thing.
But I actually ended up going out and getting 2 submissions and winning the whole thing after 3 matches. And I have always been super competitive. If anyone knows me, everyone knows that.
Another shocker. We're just learning having all the revelations today. Do you think that in regard to when you went into your first competition and getting to roll with girls for the first time in the competition setting, do you think the previous training you had, being only with male training partners, kind of, I wouldn't say gave you an edge, but made you approach the competition in a manner with which maybe gave you a little boost, helped you in a way?
I definitely think it did, because I remember feeling like I could just throw them around. They felt so light compared to 160 pounds.
Right.
Everything felt so much easier on someone smaller and my size.
Yeah. Now, you've been in jiu-jitsu, like you said, for about 5 years, and you're was it a 2-stripe?
3-stripe.
3-stripe now. See, I get in trouble for these things, not remembering. 3-stripe purple belt now. And what are some things now that if you were able to go back and talk to white belt Katie, what are some things you would give advice on, and would you do anything different if you could tell her how to approach things differently? Are there some little tidbits of advice you've picked up along the way that you think would be beneficial to her or beneficial to any person who's first starting in jiu-jitsu?
I think I would tell myself that it's okay to take easy days or take days off.
Right.
I've always been all or nothing, and so I started training pretty much every day. I think my gym was closed 1 day a week, so I was there 6 days a week from the beginning. And even when I was kind of injured, I was still training through, which probably made my injuries a lot worse than they needed to be.
Right.
And I would feel guilty when I would take days off, and I still sometimes do. And I have to remind myself that it's okay you don't have to go 100% and hard all the time. And there's a balance, and rest days are just as important.
Yeah, rest days are necessary, especially if you're looking to do this long term. You need to make sure that you take the proper time in the short term to allow yourself to continue train for the long term. It's one thing if you want to burn bright and go out in a blaze of glory and, have a good few years in this sport, but if it's something that you truly want to have as part of your life for many years to come, it's very important for people to recognize that and to know it's okay when you come in and you're new and you first start rolling. It's okay to tap early and often. It's okay to come in and let your professor know, hey, this is hurt. Is it okay if I only work technique today? Or sometimes you're going to have a potential injury to a point where you can just come in and watch, but even through coming in and watching and observing, you can still continue to learn, and you're going to set yourself up in the long run for when you're old like me to not be too banged up, right? You see a lot of the competitors nowadays who are already so injured by the time they reach black belt that they don't have that much longevity, and you watch them walk around and they look crippled, and you're like, man, what are they going to look like after 30 or 40? Like, I don't know about you, but my goal is to do this forever. So I think having that mindset change is important. But as you know, sometimes we have to come to it on our own too and learn the hard way, unfortunately. How did Women Who Roll come to be?
So I went to my first Girls and Gis shortly after I started jiu-jitsu, and I was amazed by how many women were like training and everything and on the mats, and I wanted to do something to also encourage women. So I started the blog and everything, and I just want to encourage people to try it, to keep trying it, and I kind of put my story out there of I try to be 100% real. I show the ups and the downs So people know that they're not alone. Like, this is normal what they're going through.
That's important too, because most people don't post their failures. The filters and things we can put on our social media posts really allow us to paint our life in a certain manner that may be unrealistic, and in people who we have influence over are looking at these things and trying to adhere to a false standard that's not reality. So I think that's really cool that you make sure you post both the ups and the downs. In competition, there's always going to be times where we lose. Unfortunately, we're not able to win all the time. I've lost way more times than I've won. I've had some notable wins, that people remember, and I've lost countless times. So it's very important. So you built this momentum coming off the Girls and Geese event and started Women Who Roll, started as a blog.
Yes.
And then branched out into other forms of social media, and you have a huge following. I remember when you first came here, my Instagram follower count was higher than yours, and now how many are you up to on Instagram now?
Almost 12,000.
Wow. Blew me away. I'm still trying to get to 10,000 so I can get the swipe up function and be cool like you. So with Women Who Roll, what are some of your goals just to continue spreading the word about jiu-jitsu and showing how it can have a positive impact, and how everybody should be able to train and get some benefit out of their training?
I want to do that, and then I also I want to start a scholarship fund.
Oh, very cool.
I know Girls and Geese does that, but I think that there's a lot of people that need that. I know when I first started, I started as a single mother, and my old coach was great in working with me on affording jiu-jitsu, but not everyone has that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Gis are expensive, no gi gear is expensive, tournaments are expensive. So I want to get some kind of scholarship for people, not necessarily for the bigger tournaments, but for the local tournaments where we're not seeing the women show up.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that's improving, that we have a lot more women training, but you definitely notice at the competitions it's still definitely a way smaller turnout. I think the last Revolution tournament was a great example of how much it's grown, because there was way more female competitors than before, but it's still definitely the ratio is way more men competing. Going back to what we were talking about earlier with training with men, what do you think, what are some things that you would say if you were trying to tell a guy how he should roll when he's rolling with a girl? What are some tips and advice as far as how to approach rolling with a girl? Because I see men go to two different extremes, and neither one is beneficial for their training partner. And we don't even have to say that this is with a woman or a girl. This should be how you approach rolling with anyone. We always see the extreme of either the guy doesn't know what to do, so he goes way too light, and neither training partner gets anything out of the roll, or the guy feels threatened because he doesn't want to quote-unquote lose or get tapped out by a girl, and goes to the other extreme and goes way too hard, uses way too many physical attributes. So what would be some things that you would tell somebody if they needed advice on how to approach rolling with women?
I would say to focus on like the size differences rather than the gender difference.
Right.
I'm a small female, but there are also larger females as well, and I think they experience problems with this as well, where they go too light because they're a girl.
Right.
Versus if you just treat us as a male partner, and maybe we're a little not as strong as you, so you want to like tone it down and work on your technique instead of trying to muscle things, which I think you should do with anyone.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I don't think there should be this big distinction between how you roll with a guy versus a girl. It should be about how you approach rolling in a technical manner. And if you are a guy working with a way smaller guy, you should be trying to work technique and scale your level of physical attributes and technical attributes to be in balance with those that they possess. and not just overwhelm them with physical attributes and your size and everything. You kind of take away from some of your growth in approaching it that way because you build a false sense of security, because there's always somebody bigger. So if you're approaching rolling in a manner where you're able to dominate smaller people, but then you're matched up with somebody relative to your size and skill level, it's going to be a rude awakening. Or somebody bigger than you who's more skilled and bigger. It's like, okay, well, what jiu-jitsu do you possess at that point that can deal with this? So I think it's a matter of approaching jiu-jitsu in a way that allows you to be technical and help push your partner back and forth, because I think rolling is very much like a conversation, and the conversation can't always be one-sided. There needs to be a back and forth. And if you approach rolling with somebody who's smaller, just by smashing them and tapping them as many times as you can and using your weight and all of these things, and putting more pressure than you need to, that's unrealistic in relation to their size, you set yourself up in a way that limits the growth of both individuals instead of having that balance where you can both take something away that you learn from the roll. I
definitely agree. And you also don't want to be the reason someone quits jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
It's really disheartening when you're just being bullied for a 6-minute round
and
you're tapped 10 times. You don't learn anything except for
how to tap.
Yeah. And then you think you suck and you're like, why am I doing this?
Exactly. And that brings to another point, because a lot of people correlate tapping with losing and can't make the distinction of training versus competition. When we're in the club and we get tapped, it's training. It's not a loss. It's only a loss if you don't learn something from it. So if it's one-sided and you're just getting tapped over and over and you're not learning something from it, it very well can feel like losing. And, people coming into jiu-jitsu, especially as beginners, it's a very scary thing to get into, especially if you've never done anything like this. And then you come in and you're already insecure, and then you get manhandled, for the lack of a better term, and it doesn't help build that confidence. So I think it's important to approach it in a balanced way. Let's see. I had a couple things I put in my phone here, just as little reminders. So, yes. I think this is going to be a good one. So, your significant other, your husband Ty, is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, a recent black belt in jiu-jitsu. I had the honor of promoting him not too long ago, and you guys trained together. So, what is that dynamic like?
That dynamic is very challenging.
Yeah, you guys are still working on that, aren't you?
I think it's going to be a lifelong process.
It is.
Especially since he's now a black belt. And so I think he's taking on more of the coaching role.
Yeah.
But that's
it's hard
because he's my husband. And
it's hard to receive that information from your significant other.
He's learned to not give me feedback unless I ask for it.
Right.
Because there's times where you two can say the same exact thing and be critiquing what I'm doing, but from him it sounds different.
Correct.
It'll feel like
there's
a personal attack.
Yeah, there's a tone.
Exactly.
Yeah, that happens with my wife Amy sometimes, because it's she feels that I'll say something and it'll be just like I would coach any other student, but to her it comes across as like I'm disappointed in her.
Exactly.
Yeah, you sounded like you were disappointed in me for not knowing that. And so it's definitely a tough balance. I'm still trying to learn after all these years of how to deal with that. Now, on the other hand, it gives you a great training partner to get in extra mat time with, and somebody that has that undying support for you in your ventures and all of these things. But when it comes to rolling and drilling and taking advice,
he has to be extremely careful to not muscle me.
Yeah.
Because I get so frustrated when other people muscle me, and
Right.
I will vent to him about it, And so then when he does it, I get extra upset.
Yeah.
It'll be like 10 times more upset because I'm like, you know how
how I feel about that, and now you're doing it.
So I don't think I give him enough credit for how much effort he puts into how he rolls with me, but it's been a long time coming, and he doesn't even coach me ever. He won't really coach me in tournaments unless he has to.
It's probably smart.
Because, I mean, where he when he first moved down to Texas, and he didn't really know my game, and I was at the Houston Open, and he was telling me to do something, and I was like, I don't do that. Like, why are you telling me to do that? and then I was like, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm doing something, and then I went and did my own thing anyways, and afterwards I was like, I had a plan.
Yeah.
And even though he knows more than I do,
you
it's
can't.
like,
oh, she admitted it on air, Ty. She said you know more than she does.
I'm a purple belt. I know everything. I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, I was honored that Ty actually proposed to you here in class. That was a really cool thing. That was something really special for me to be a part of.
I actually thought when you brought him up there, I thought he was bringing one of my old coaches up.
Oh.
And I was so mad at him.
Yeah.
I was like, how are you going to bring them up and not tell me that you're doing this? And he's like saying this, like, I don't remember really what he said. And then he started talking about me.
It was very heartfelt.
Yeah. But I was like mad at first because I was like, no, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But then he proposed, and I was like, okay, I'm not mad at you anymore.
It was really cool. That was something very special for me to be a part of, and I know it was special for you. How many years ago did you guys meet now?
It is 3 years, over 3 years.
Over 3 years ago, and you guys actually are one of the kind of an online, you met each other online type of thing?
Yeah, we, through jiu-jitsu, we had some mutual friends, and he actually, one of my friends moved to Olympia before I moved up here, and he gave her some recommendations on gyms.
Okay.
So, like, I knew him for a while.
Yeah.
So I guess it's been almost it'll be like 4 years.
Okay.
I'd
Kind
have
of
to
since
see
you
when
started
the
talking
Facebook
online, yeah.
friendiversary would come up, because we became friends on Facebook and Instagram, but then we didn't really start talking until that's last summer in 2016.
Okay. And as somebody, as a female in the sport, I know that you often deal with a lot of unwanted attention and guys being creepy and all these different things and get horrible messages and whatnot on the social media platforms. But what was it that kind of set Ty apart from the hundreds of guys that I know reach out and ask if you're single and do all these different things? Was it that he was more genuine and honestly was trying to get to know you, or?
He never asked if I was single, never, like, he didn't even outwardly hit on me.
Right.
It was just conversation. And at first I was like, just entertaining, okay, I'm going to talk to you when you talk to me type of thing. And then Pokemon Go came out.
Oh, okay.
And
Pokemon brings people together.
Pretty much. And he had it too, and we started talking about it. And then I was like, oh, so he's actually really cool outside of jiu-jitsu. He does jiu-jitsu, and he likes Pokemon. And then I found out he likes Star Wars and Marvel.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like.
You had a lot of common interests and jiu-jitsu in common.
And so it just kind of, it stemmed off of a friendship at first, and then all of a sudden these feelings were happening, and I was like, oh no, I can't like him. He lives in Seattle. I've never even been to Seattle.
Yeah.
And
that's funny.
And now here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ty actually ended up, when I knew things were really serious, he actually moved down to Texas with you for a period of time and hated it. I remember because I was very protective of Ty because I've known him since he was just like 18 and when he had hair. And
he looks better without the hair?
He looks better without the hair, yeah. I'm glad you think that because it would be hard. It would be hard for you if you didn't feel that way. But he very much is somebody that I kind of took under my wing and almost feel like a father figure to, So when you guys took that step and he moved down there, I was kind of a little like protective over him and like, I don't know about this girl, because I would only see the online interactions with you guys.
And how much we joke around.
And I didn't know your dynamic, right? So I thought you were like being serious. And I remember commenting like some snarky things back at you or something, like when he was complaining about the air conditioning or something. I was like, hey, protecting my tie.
Well, he was a little ridiculous about the air conditioning, though.
Well, it's tie.
He turned it on his first weekend he moved down there, and it was like high 70s, and he turned on the AC in February.
See? There you go, Ty. But then, I think in one of the summers here, you were wanting air conditioning.
I've never lived without air conditioning.
Because then I was like, see?
Because
you were giving him a hard time.
I grew up in Wisconsin, and they have air conditioning. I remember one time our air conditioning went out, like the entire power went out. And I was miserable. I remember being like 9 or 10 years old and going to the park and just sitting on a swing being like, I hate my life.
Yeah.
Life's so hard and I'm so spoiled.
It's something that you become accustomed to for sure.
Especially with 2 big dogs.
Oh, yeah.
I can't sleep with dogs if there's not air
conditioning. They always want to be on you, in the bed with you, as it should be. Dogs and cats, if you don't let them on the bed, I don't know.
I will kick them off and somehow
they'll be right back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time. So in your jiu-jitsu journey, you've developed kind of this sphere of influence within the jiu-jitsu community. You have a lot of people that look up to you and also look up to you in regard to not only the type of person you are and how you use your platform in jiu-jitsu to inspire and help other people, but also looking to aspire to be a competitor like yourself, somebody who competes regularly, somebody who approaches jiu-jitsu as a profession and is looking at it in that manner. What are some things that you would share? Because I know, like, I see all the inner workings of you figuring out your travel and figuring out how you can afford things and getting, discounts on flights and all of this. That's valuable stuff to somebody to realize, like, if you really put your mind to it and you want it to be something that you can approach, you don't need to go start a GoFundMe asking for handouts. Like, there's ways you can budget and save and come up with a way to live out your dreams. So what are some things that you really focused on with figuring out how you could manage things in your regular life and still be able to make a run at going to a bunch of competitions and kind of making jiu-jitsu a viable career for yourself?
Well, first off, I write down about this time what tournaments are coming up next year, when they're going to be.
Right.
And then I can start looking at how much each one's going to be. And then I don't wait until the last minute to buy my flights. I usually buy them
plan ahead of time,
2 months out, where it's really affordable. And I almost always get Southwest. I pay a little bit extra for that, but then I've been injured or
so they have the refund type of policy.
I get 100% back if I decide to cancel my flight, and I can use it for another leg.
Nice.
So I've done that a couple of times, and then I don't stay in hotels. I only stay in Airbnbs.
Okay.
And I will book that 2 to 3 months in advance to get lower rates. I usually pay about like $35 to $40 a night compared to like the one. I don't even know how much a hotel
over
is.
100 usually. Yeah, and depending on where you're going.
It's not super nice. I only rent a room, and I only do ones with verified.
Yeah.
Just a safety aspect.
Absolutely.
But it's always been really good.
Because you're usually traveling by yourself most
Almost
of the time.
Always,
yeah.
And that saves it. And I've gotten it down to where I can go to Pans or Worlds for like $400, which is still a lot. But then if I know it's coming up, I do things to save up for it. I don't drink to begin with, but I don't go spend money at the bars. I don't go out and do that kind of stuff. This is what I want to do, and I have to make those sacrifices. And I see that it can be a sacrifice for other people, but I've been doing it so long I don't really feel like it is.
Right. It's part of your routine.
Exactly.
It's just the way things are.
Pretty much.
To facilitate what your goals are and the things that you want to do.
And then the last thing I do is I travel with food. I don't eat out much when I'm out there, because that's a huge part.
You always have snacks.
That too.
It helps me out when I'm coaching all day. I always know Katie will have something for me to eat.
And it, especially, I used to compete at rooster weight and light feather it helps you keep on weight as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Knowing exactly what's going into your body. And also, I always tell people when you compete, like, you should try to adhere as close to your normal routine as possible. So when you're back home, like how you would eat, how much rest you would get, all of these different things, you should try to have those in alignment with when you compete as well. It's like if I go to compete and all of a sudden I'm eating completely different types of food that I ever eat and doing things completely different, I can't expect my body to perform to the same level or in the same manner with which it does when we're here at home if I completely change everything up. So I think that's a really key thing, and it gives you more control over, especially if you're cutting now.
Yeah.
One of the big changes, well, there's two big changes I think that would be beneficial for people to hear, or things that we've worked extra diligently on together, both me as your coach helping you and then you as the student. We started a lot of mental training, which is, I think, would you say that's something that's benefited you in your competition?
I would say that's the sole thing that's changed my game. Yeah. I still have a lot of anxiety outside of jiu-jitsu, but going into competitions. But the mental training has helped me both with my anxiety and depression, both on and off the mats.
Yeah.
And I think whether you compete or not, you should look into mental training because jiu-jitsu is really hard and it's a roller coaster. There's ups and downs, and it can help you whether you're a competitor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all applicable to everyday life as well. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's giving yourself more tools. Just like learning a new technique is a tool. Mental training aspect those are extra tools you can have in your arsenal as well. Out of the mental training books you've read or listened to, which one is your favorite so far?
The Art of Mental Training.
Yeah.
I've probably listened to that about 25 times now. Especially on the plane, if I start feeling like I'm spiraling, I'll listen to it again.
Yep.
I don't know who the voice.
That's actually on that one, that's the author.
He has a very soothing voice.
Yeah, DC Gonzalez is the author, and he's actually a black belt in BJJ, which I didn't find out till way after the fact. Like, I'd been recommending that book to a lot of people, and then I was like, something about the way this guy talks about things really resonates with me, and then I looked into it a little more. He had coached wrestling, he'd done some other traditional martial arts, and then turns out he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. So yeah, I find the same thing. Like, something about how he talks and how he relates information is very easy to receive. So other than the Art of Mental Training, have there been any others that kind of gave you some little elements that you could add to your mental arsenal?
10-minute toughness.
Yeah.
Both of those have been, I have a whole library of mental training books now, but those two are the ones I keep going back to.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, and I believe 10-minute toughness, the author, I believe his name is Jason Selk. Double check that, but if you look up 10-minute toughness, the nice thing about that one is it's a shorter read and gives you some quick tools that you could start to utilize right away. And then the Art of Mental Training goes deeper into all of those aspects and provides some other tools. So out of the mental training tools, we always hear the common things about visualization, positive affirmations, all of these things. Out of those, what do you think has been the one that helps you kind of dial things in when you, like what you said, when you're starting to catch your mind spiraling and it's going to the negative aspect instead of staying positive? Is it the visualization for you, or is it kind of a combination of all the elements?
I don't use the visualization until the day of.
Yeah,
really.
Same here.
It's mostly the shutting down the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to kind of tear myself down. I'm really hard on myself.
Yeah.
I'm my worst critic. And so I have to catch myself and just stop telling myself that I'm not good enough, that I'm not going to achieve my goals. And that's the best thing that it's taught me, is that even if I don't believe it right away, and I think that's what happened at first, is I had to stop saying it, and I didn't believe the positive affirmations I was telling myself, but then after a while I started believing them.
Yeah, and then also being able to receive positive feedback from other people, from coaches, from training partners. Like, I know that's a thing too. It's like, well, you have to say that because you're my coach or my training partner. Like, accepting positive feedback and praise and stuff can be a challenge within that mental battle of the negative self-talk. And, I feel like there's two different competition, or probably three different competitions. There's when you're getting ready for a tournament and you're doing the actual training and drilling and live rolling, that's a competition. You have the actual competition itself that you go compete in. But then in the time leading up to the competition and when you're there on competition day, you also have the mental competition to win with yourself. And that one, I think, is really the biggest one, because I've personally experienced this, and I've also witnessed it on many occasions where, won't name names, but somebody on an incredibly high level comes in and gets beat by somebody who you would never be able to beat them. 9 times out of 10 is never going to beat them, but you could tell that the other person showed up in an improper mental state, or something was going on in their life that affected them and helped take them out of the present or out of that zone. And you can really notice a difference. When you go to compete, you have a routine that you follow, and I do the same thing. And I think part of that is learned through some of that mental training. But what's your general routine look like? Like, you arrive a couple days before you compete. Take us through the kind of the process of how you approach competing now. And maybe if you could compare it to how you did it before.
Okay. So I'll tell about what I do now. So I'll start the day before, and I really, that night, I focus on, now I fuel up. I don't cut weight anymore. I'm fighting up to featherweight.
That's something we should talk about. That's another aspect. That's the other thing we changed a little bit.
So I eat well. I usually will have like whatever I normally eat during normal training. I'll eat that the night before, and then I take an Epsom salt bath.
Right.
Not to cut weight, just to relax my body and help relax my mind. And then I make sure and I get at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And then I wake up and I'll go to the tournament 2 to 3 hours before I even have my call time.
Right.
I don't want to be rushing to the tournament and have added anxiety.
Yeah.
Because of that. Once I get there, I'll usually change, and then I'll sit on the warm up mats if they have some. And I'm not stretching or anything. I'm listening to my music. I have a playlist that I listen to that helps me get in my mental state, and I'm just going through thinking about all the times that I've done exactly what I want to do. I'm visualizing all the times that everything's lined up perfectly.
Yeah, whether that be in training or other competitions, yeah.
And then I'll start, if it's gi, I'll start taping my fingers during this, and then I start stretching, and then I'll start doing some like drilling and warming up. And then I'll be in the bullpen, and I have a mantra that I say to myself. I am calm, I am composed, I am a champion.
Right.
Because I'm focused on myself. I'm not focused on anyone else. It doesn't matter who I'm competing against.
Exactly.
It's about me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not about changing what you do well to suit somebody else's game and work around what they do really well. You're wanting to be the best version of yourself. So if you're too focused on what they may or may not do, it could take you out of the proactive mindset and put you into a reactive mindset. So now contrast that with how you used to approach competition.
So I used to kind of, I don't know if I didn't take it as seriously, but I didn't put as much prep into it.
Right.
Now I'm very careful with what I'm doing the night before and taking care of what I need and everything. And I didn't have a mantra. So I would get up there and I'd be focused on the other person. I'd be
super
focused
nervous.
Super nervous. And I still have those moments where
yeah, everybody does. Excited, not nervous.
Yes,
so.
exactly. And I'm focused on like, oh, are they going to pull guard? Are they going to go for takedowns? Instead of going through visualizing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to be like, okay, well, if I win this one, I'll get bronze, and that'll be good enough, rather than.
Oh yeah.
I used to do that. Like,
I
this
used
is
to
what
do
I
that
want to
too.
do. Like, versus like.
I'd be happy if I just won my first match.
Exactly.
Then
and
what happens? Sometimes you win your first match and then you lose right afterwards. Yeah.
And I think that's what happened when I went to Pans as a blue belt for the first time. I was like, all right, I'm not going to lose my first match. And I went out and I had a great match, and then I think I lost my third match.
Yeah.
So I had 2 great matches, and then I went out and was like, all right, I've done really great. I'm really proud of myself. And then I was like,
if I lose, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
So
and I already am defeating myself before I even get out there.
Yeah. Well, you've already accepted it as a possibility at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you didn't put as much into the build up, or you were getting there. You were more focused, less on yourself, more on what other people might do. As far as in the matches, did you approach them at a different pace or anything than you do now? Are you a little more calculated now?
I think I was a little rushed. Mm-hmm. And I still have a tendency to get a little frantic.
Yeah, every now and again, but it's normal.
And I've been trying to work on slowing it down more and being more composed during my match, rather than doing scrambles, because there's going to be always someone that can out scramble you.
Exactly.
And that's gotten me in trouble sometimes.
Yep.
And instead of forcing scrambles, I want to force the sweep instead of a scramble.
Yeah, and trying to conserve energy, like you're in super good shape and somebody with great cardio, but you got to remember there's always somebody with better cardio. There's always somebody who's got, more speed, more ability to out scramble you. So the thing I see a lot with people with kind of that scramble game type of approach is they do great until somebody can neutralize it and slow them down, or the other person can outpace them and out scramble them, and they kind of run into some little roadblocks. So, and we talked at the beginning of this part about that you don't really cut weight anymore, and that was another one of the changes we made. We were noticing that you were getting injured a lot, like preventable type of injuries, and kind of came to the conclusion that your body was a little depleted. And so for you, as somebody who came into this going in a smaller weight class and now you've moved up, how do you feel?
So I've been training under you almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
It'll be 2 years next month, actually.
That's crazy.
I guess in a couple of weeks.
Can't believe it's been 2 years already.
I know. And I walked into the gym at 107, which I'm 5'3", for those who don't know.
Yeah.
I act like I'm 6'3", but I'm not.
6'5".
6'5".
She's my height.
And I used to compete at the rooster weight, which is 107, I believe,
with your
the
gi.
Yeah. So I used to have to go down to 104. And then I was...
Your gi only weighs 3 pounds?
Oh, it weighs less than that.
Mine are 6 pounds or more.
I have a gi that weighs only 2 pounds.
Wow.
As long as it's not patched up.
Okay.
But so I used to have to get down to 104 to comfortably be able to eat and drink a little bit before. And at first it was easy, and maybe because I was younger, or your body doesn't get used to it, and I could do it. And then I was having trouble getting to that weight, and it was affecting my mental state. And I was more focused on the weight instead of jiu-jitsu. And it wasn't healthy for getting better at jiu-jitsu.
You had to be so stressed out and have this extra thing to worry about. Like, oh, I hope, because I've seen so many competitors do that. It's like constantly checking the scale, constantly like measuring what they can and can't eat. And we'll say this, like, there's a right and wrong way to cut weight. And like, if you're within a couple pounds or whatever, that's one thing. But, people cutting more than that, especially with jiu-jitsu, and then we weigh right before we go out for our matches. That's a very fine line to walk of whether it's going to benefit you or whether it's going to backfire on you.
Yeah.
And I've seen it backfire a lot more times than I've seen it benefit. And That's, again, not to say that you'll never cut weight, but there's times where it can betray you. Unless you're somebody incredibly experienced, like maybe somebody who wrestled or something, who's been cutting weight their whole life. And even then you'll notice a lot of those people end up moving up weight classes and things just because it is so hard on your body in the long term. But now when you go out there...
So now I fight at featherweight. I went up to light feather and I felt good. And then I moved up another weight class and I walk around about 120 and I fight at the 129.
And we've also incorporated some strength and conditioning and things to your routine as well.
And I feel better now. And I don't think the few pounds that I'm giving up, even if they're cutting down to featherweight, I don't think if I lose, that's not why I'm losing. It's my jiu-jitsu. And now I get to focus. I get to go out there and I get to focus on my jiu-jitsu. I don't get to focus about, I don't worry about if I'm going to get exhausted because my body's dehydrated.
Exactly.
I don't have to worry about what I'm eating. I maybe stuff on the scale once a week now.
Yeah, just to check. Yeah.
And because I can, I'm not going to go over 129. Like,
no, just to make sure that you're maintaining or that you're not going, for you, it's hard because you got to make sure you're not losing weight.
Yeah.
Because like you're having to eat a lot just to maintain the weight that you're at right now. So you have such a fast metabolism. So I think for you, it's more we're checking the scale to make sure we're keeping the weight up and everything. But I've noticed with you a lot less injuries
I feel like my knees are better. My elbows are better. Like my joints feel better.
I think your joints were very...
I feel stronger.
Yeah, I think your joints were very dehydrated, and that was causing some issues with basic injuries and just pain in general. Now, how have you adapted your diet since then? Because I know when you first came up here, you were kind of following a vegan type of way of eating and everything, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's ways to do that and have a great diet and everything, but to get the kind of calories you need, how did you adjust? Because I know you still eat clean, but you made some adjustments to your diet as well.
Well, I eat a lot more meat now.
Okay.
I don't think I was getting enough protein either.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to peanuts, so it made it really hard to get enough protein.
Yeah.
Without eating too much soy, and it was really challenging, especially as an athlete.
Yeah, as an athlete, it can be difficult. People don't realize, like, you can do a vegan diet and get enough protein. It's just way, way harder, and there has to be a lot of supplementation involved to do it right. Because just to maintain your current muscle mass, you're supposed to eat 1 gram of protein per pound you weigh. So it's supposed to be even higher if you're an athlete and you're somebody that's breaking your muscles down. And the other thing with the vegan diet is that not all the amino acids that are needed exist in the proper quantities. I think most vegan protein has the right amount of the right amino acids, like the complete chain of amino acids, but they're not to the same levels, so it can be hard if you're low on one amino acid and not high enough on another and all these things. So it makes it a little more difficult. It's not that it can't be done, but so for you, adding in a little more protein and some complete proteins and things like that, you feel that helped you out a little bit? You feel your energy's good and everything? I
definitely feel like I recover faster now.
Nice.
And I also eat a lot more carbs now.
Okay.
To stay at 107, I really had to limit my carbs, and I was limiting a lot of stuff, and it just looking back, it wasn't the healthiest.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I was healthy, but I really wasn't. And I think as a female, I think my hormones were all messed up too. And
because being an athlete can do that as well, but also diet is a huge component of that as well. So again, just disclaimer, not anti-vegan at all. My professor's vegan, does awesome, has a great diet. I just want to make that clear. It's just something I think everybody has to assess what the right approach is for them, and doing an approach that's not only healthy but helps you feel the best overall, especially if you're a competitor. There's no one way to do things, and it's all about finding that balance and finding what works best for you as an individual with your individual needs.
And I still eat a lot of vegan foods.
Yeah.
Like, I love vegan foods.
That's awesome.
But I just feel like for my body, I need more protein
Right.
than vegan can give me.
So we're getting close to the end here. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a moment to talk about sponsorship, because you're kind of an anomaly. You had some sponsors at Blue, and you have a lot of really great sponsors at Purple Belt. Like, it's pretty uncommon for lower belts to be able to build a reputation to where you have sponsors willing to work with you as somewhat of a lower belt in jiu-jitsu. Most companies, stick to sponsoring brown or black belts. So how did you approach seeking out sponsorship? Did you put together a resume and kind of approach it that way?
I got my first sponsor as a white belt, actually.
Oh, wow.
But it was like a nonprofit.
Okay.
And it was someone that just wanted to help me out. I was, like I mentioned before, I was a single mom when I started jiu-jitsu, but I wanted to compete, and it was very financially taxing.
Yeah.
And so some people wanted to help me, and then I remember Fuji was my first big sponsorship, and I was a blue belt, and I'd already gone to some big tournaments and placed at big tournaments, and I had been wearing their brand for a while. Even as a white belt, I had good competition photos in there.
Right.
So I wasn't going to a brand asking for handouts.
Yeah, you weren't just asking for free stuff. You actually believed in the brand and were representing it far before you ever were sponsored by them. And
I had already kind of had a relationship with them through social media, just repping their brand outside of being sponsored. So then I kind of messaged their old social media guy, Tommy, and asked him about a sponsorship, and he gave me a email to send a resume to, and so then I made a resume and put I put a little bio and some pictures, and then by every year, like everything that I've won and every tournament that I've placed at, because when I still do this for the most part, I was competing about once a month. I've won all the Texas Opens,
right,
and Chicago Open and all that. So I put that together and I sent it out to them, and then I had a little freak out moment because Travis Stevens emailed me back, and then they accepted me as an athlete, and it was a huge moment. And it was shortly before I moved up here,
I think so.
And then since then, it was just, I haven't represented any brands that I didn't know about beforehand.
Right.
I don't go into any of them blind. I only represent brands I believe in.
Yeah, that's important.
And so then when I would contact them or they'd contact me, we already had a relationship.
Right.
It wasn't someone being like, hey, give me free stuff because
which you see happen
I'm special.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah. It happens a lot. People jump around too, depending on who's going to give them more free things and whatnot. I feel that proper way to approach sponsorship is to, one, you have to be able to show them what they're getting in return. It's not you getting free stuff from them. It's like, here's how I'm going to represent you. I believe in your brand. I believe in the people behind the brand. And here's how I'm going to be a good representative for your brand, and not just trying to gather, free things. Because for them, it's free advertising too. You got to think as the person being sponsored, well, they're giving me something. It's a write-off so they can represent their stuff. There's got to be more than that. So Fuji's definitely supported you way above and beyond this entire time. And you have a lot of other great sponsors too. Mad Ritual, which is a CBD product. That's awesome. I'm sponsored by them as well. Shout out, Black Friday sale going on. Love those guys at Mad Ritual.
I was actually super skeptical at first. You
recommended
them to me.
I know, yeah.
And I was like, CBD, I don't know.
And I
if
was
this is gonna
skeptical
work,
too. Yeah, I was skeptical too, but
it does work. It really
that was
does.
the thing. It's again about finding something that works for you, and helped me a lot with recovery, and I know it's helped you a lot. So, what are some other sponsors that you have? And you have a no-gi sponsor as well?
Dodgy Collective. I'm
Nice.
sponsored by them, and they do my no-gi gear. So if you've seen me in Fight to Win, they've made my custom rash guard. And then I'm sponsored by Yoga for BJJ
Nice.
as well, which is amazing because I don't have time to go to a yoga studio.
Yeah.
But yoga helps me recover a lot. And then I'm also sponsored by Jiu-Jitsu Soap and Flex It Pink, which is different than all the other ones. They're not in the jiu-jitsu community. They're actually a women empowerment.
Oh, very cool.
Fitness group.
Okay. So you're a third stripe purple belt, and you've got way more sponsors than me. I'm impressed. Anything you want to leave people with before we end the podcast? Any shout-outs to sponsors, shout-outs to people, anything that you would like to leave everybody with as we sign off the air?
I feel really put on the spot. I feel like I need to have something really full of wisdom. I just want to give a shout out to Ty, my husband.
Awesome.
We've talked a lot about competing and the nutrition and all that, and he's been with me through it all. And it's really not easy being married to someone who's competing all the time. He has to really step up with our daughter. Yes, he's helped support me financially as I do this. And he deals with me. Well, he dealt with me when I was cutting weight. And anyone that has cut weight, we all know that we suck as people.
Yeah. If he could make it through that, he can make it through anything, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. I give a shout out to Ty, too. I love that guy. All right, Katie, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. Until next time.